Welcome to Oops, I'm in a Cult. I'm Charity Navalesi.
And I'm Scott Barker.
We're former members born and raised in the Living Word Fellowship, and we're here to investigate this organization that branded itself as a Christian church for over 70 years, but turned out to be just another cult.
On today's episode, we are going to be reviewing, for the first time, Gary Hargrave's Deposition. Gary was the leader of our cult for 40 years, and finally, he was pulled into a deposition to be held to a little bit of account for all the bullshit that he said over the past 40 years. And we are going to read all of that to you today. More or less.
Perfect.
Welcome to the whatever podcast this is.
Are we going to change the title, or are we good with?
We love Oops, I'm in a Cult.
What is this podcast about, though, Charity?
John Robert Stevens.
The Living Word.
The Walk.
It's cults. It's cons.
And corn.
And they all sitting there, and they blindfold the women and have them touch the titties, the man titties. You're going to watch as two former cult members try to de-dumbify themselves by doing a podcast about the cult that they were involved in their entire life.
Thought it was a church, turned out it was a cult. Oh, there's a good tagline.
That's what it is. That's it.
Oops, I'm in a cult. Look at all this.
Look at all this. Is this it?
This is it. Okay.
What is it? What is all that, Charity?
Today, for those of you on audio only, I've got a stack of file folders with about 1 million Post-it notes on them. And this, my friends, is the deposition of Gary Hargrave.
Oh, it's so beautiful. The deposition of Gary Hargrave.
So this is with regard to the lawsuits that were recently settled. And now we can talk about them.
Yeah. So just so everybody knows what a deposition is, I don't really know, but I know from reading this what it kind of is. It's an interview, essentially, where the lawyers, in this case, lawyers from the Zalkin law firm, who were handling the cases on behalf of the plaintiffs that were filed in 2019.
I believe so, somewhere around there.
Something like that, and have been carrying on for a long time. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of documents have just been released, available on the Los Angeles court website. And we actually got these pages, just a bag of them, donated to us by a listener. And in the documents that we got was Gary Hargrave's deposition. And about how many pages was that whole deposition?
400 to 500.
400 to 500 pages.
Yeah.
There were a number of pages removed.
For confidentiality.
And it seems like, additionally, it seems like, just based off the context of the pages that are in there, it seems like it was a day, possibly 2 days.
Yeah.
Of sitting down and interviewing Gary motherfucking Hargrave.
And we are going to be mentioning names simply because this is public record. Anybody can find it.
And we're doing,
first names. We're
first
trying
names.
To protect people, so. But
I'm not going to make it super easy, but for clarity, it's there. So we're doing that. A couple other things. So we're going to go over in a second what we've selected, because obviously we're not going through 500 pages. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in there. There's a lot of like lawyer talk and whatnot, but we have painstakingly gone through and read everything and have pulled out the things that we find interesting. And we're going to share all of that in story format. So there's a lot of like, we definitely read some of the lawyery stuff because it helps tell the story.
And whatnot, but we're skipping a lot of that too, just for brevity's sake.
Exactly, because there's a lot of objections. But I think that's just probably normal. I don't know really, but the thing that we also did, because you'll see we have these categories. You can kind of show for those that are watching. We have put them into different folders. Yeah. For the different categories of things that we recognize that are in here, just stories like, for example, Nephilim and Rick's affairs are different categories, but they're sprinkled throughout the deposition, and so we kind of pieced them together into one cohesive conversation. So what will we be covering in this?
So we've got Nephilim. Gary goes into detail about what is the Nephilim.
Yeah, I just
which is interesting considering all the other episodes we've done where we've mentioned that a lot, and a lot of people are like, "What the hell is a Nephilim?" And
yes, and now it's on record what the Living Word thought a Nephilim was. Like court record. It's on, and that's part of the thing that's interesting about it is you'll see in all of this. I know I'm distracting. She's going to list all the stuff that we're going to go over, and it's really good. But like, what's interesting that you see in that Nephilim, for example, is just how much Gary tries to be like, oh, no, Nephilim's like a general term. It has nothing to do with the living word.
Biblical.
It's just biblical. Yeah. And how the lawyers are like having to nail down okay, that might be true, but how did you use it?
Yes. He was always trying to do that. You'll see he's always trying to be like, oh, well, that's a biblical. No, but how did you use this XYZ in the Living Word Fellowship? Because as former members know, there was very specific, meaning assigned to ideas that were maybe biblical in nature.
Yes,
but had a different meaning in the Living Word Fellowship.
For example, some of the things that we didn't cover but that he struggles with is the body.
Yeah, calling it the body.
The walk. And a kingdom. And what those things mean and how we use them for us. But he's like, no. The body means the body of Christ. The walk means the walk with God. Everybody uses this. It's biblical. And the kingdom is obviously the kingdom of God. And everybody else uses that. It has nothing to do with us. We would never refer to ourselves as the kingdom or the body or any of that stuff.
Lies. So we've Rick's Affairs. We've got Nephilim. We've got Submission. And the biggest stack is about Gary and Marilyn and John Stevens as Apostolic Fathering Ministries, because he tries, as you will see, so hard to basically deny that he was in charge or that Marilyn was in charge.
And that's what I think probably the point of the deposition, or one of the main points of the deposition, was just to establish and prove and show very clearly that Gary was the one in charge across all of it. And it's just wild. The reason the stack is so big is because he is constantly trying to evade.
He's very slippery. I loved to use that word talking about Gary after reading all this. Yeah, he's constantly trying to downplay his role, which is hilarious considering our whole existence in the fellowship was Gary and Marilyn trying to obviously lift themselves up as the end all be all. They had the final say in everything.
That's right.
And he's trying to say that they didn't.
Yeah, that's right.
So
it's really shitty. And I think that's what's actually really fun about this. Charity and I were talking right before we hit record about the significance of this deposition and these documents and the work that the lawyers at the Zalkin law firm did to get to this place where they could set Gary down in a room and force him to clarify. I mean, the dude talked for 40 years. I've got a wall of tapes.
The only voice that mattered.
The only voice that mattered. And just can you clarify what the fuck you were trying to say for the last 40 years is what this, and it is something that we would have never seen. We would have never had the opportunity to see. We certainly couldn't have done it ourselves, is to sit Gary down and be like, please explain this. Please.
And ask him the hard questions and actually try to get a truthful answer, which you'll find does not work until he's worn out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He, to us, was the voice of God, but to the law, he's just a dude.
He's a nobody.
That has to just answer questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
He's very, it's just so, he's so arrogant. And it's all those years spent trying to loving the power. Yeah. Now he wants to be I didn't have any power, because now the power means he was responsible for all the terrible shit that went down. And he was.
Okay, so did you mention what the first one we're doing actually was?
The first one is just kind of a one-off fun.
Yeah.
It's illustrative of the bizarre culture of the Living Word Fellowship and how leadership was not exactly professional. I don't know. This is we call it, the note says shirtless.
Shirtless. I've been calling it man titties.
Man titties.
Okay, so this is we'll just read it. It's a one pager. Is this my copy?
Yeah.
And it's just the lawyers trying. They have a photo. And they are setting the photo down in front of Gary, and they're asking him to explain this photo.
Yeah.
And here's what we're going to do also for funsies. Charity's going to be the lawyer, the lawyer who works for Zalkin, and I am going to be Gary.
So sorry. We flipped a coin. Who has to be Gary?
That's right. What?
Okay, so I'm the lawyer again. Okay, all of the people that you do recognize in the picture, they all have affiliation with the Apostolic Company and the Fellowship in some leadership capacity at some point. Is that fair to say?
Certainly.
And as you've described, they come from all different churches.
Yes.
Now, as you look at the building and sort of recognize that this is at least a gathering of people from different locations, does it look like any place in particular that you...
I do not recognize the location.
Okay. Do you have any idea if this is a shepherding meeting, a pastoral meeting, an apostolic company meeting?
It's obviously not a meeting of any kind.
Spoiler alert, it was. Well, okay. Loosely around a gathering.
No.
You're just really hamming up the douchebaggery.
It's not hard.
I know. And again, you hadn't seen this before. Do you have any idea what they're doing in this picture?
No.
Is this something that you would describe as appropriate or inappropriate for people with leadership capacity at the fellowship?
Not being there, no, I can't. There was obviously some kind of game or something. I don't know what.
Right. So a game with...
Could have been inappropriate or appropriate.
Okay, so that's what I want to understand. So a game that's got 4 men that are sitting shirtless, a blindfolded woman in front of them, touching one of them in some way. Is that something that, again, in your position, Apostolic Fathering Ministry would condone as an acceptable type of endeavor?
Objective, argumentative. Okay, we're going to take a moment here to pause. Just because we didn't explain to the audience what the photo was until just this moment.
Uh-huh.
So it is, did you hear the description of what that photo was?
Shirtless.
Just wanted to, this is APCO again, is the Apostolic Ministry or
Apostolic Company.
Apostolic Company was the leaders.
The leaders of the fellowship.
And so this photo depicts a number of those leaders sitting there shirtless with a blindfolded woman reaching out and touching
one of their chests.
Yeah, touching their chest. Yeah, exactly.
We'll show you in a minute.
Okay, so read the end of that. What was the question at the end of that?
So there's an objection, and then Gary says, I wasn't there.
I wasn't there, so I don't know the circumstances.
Okay, so as you sit here today, are you unwilling to say that this was unacceptable?
Yes.
Okay, so Gary's unwilling to say that this is unacceptable. And why don't you have a look and see?
So yeah, role play. So for those that are watching, have fun watching this. And those that we'll explain it afterwards in this. Here we go.
And APCO being APCO, well, there had to be a party.
All right. Okay, so that was a little excerpt from one of the publicly distributed Living Word. What are they called? The
APCO conferences.
Yeah,
the newsletters.
The newsletter. Yeah. That was a highlight from the newsletter. So you see very quickly in there that shirtless game happening, along with a weird straw situation. But focusing on the shirtless game first, it's very clear in the video that that's in the sanctuary at the Valley Church,
in Los
Angeles, Church of Living Word.
Did it show the shirtless?
That was the first thing it showed.
Why did I miss that?
No, you blanked out. You were having too much fun jazzing along. Do we need to watch it again for charity?
APCO being APCO, it was a party.
Yeah,
there had to be a party. There it is.
Yeah, it's the first step. It is pretty quick, but you can see it.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of shirtless APCO leaders, and like many of them are very senior. Members of the Apostolic Company, and which is the regulatory organization within the Fellowship of Churches. And they all sitting there, and they blindfold the women and have them touch the titties, the man titties.
This podcast is brought to you by us, your friendly neighborhood co-busters.
Oops, I'm in an advertisement. If you'd like to support our efforts and access exclusive bonus content,
like behind-the-scenes conversations,
let's put this behind us.
Access to our research and more,
head over to Supercast, where you can subscribe monthly or yearly.
It's exclusive, it's personal, it's behind the scenes.
All about the Living Word cult.
Went to the records department trying to get filings for John Robert Stevens' divorce.
This is an unskippable advertisement.
Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the episode.
So anyways, Gary says at the end there he's unwilling to say that that's inappropriate.
which I think is hilarious.
Yeah. And it is a meeting. Again, Gary said, obviously it's not a meeting. It's definitely one. Okay. So that's fun. Anyways, that's just a fun one to get us started. Now we'll talk about what? The Nephilim?
Nephilim. So there's something referred to in the fellowship as a Nephilim spirit.
So the concept biblically is believed by many that these Nephilim beings died or were destroyed by Joshua in the taking of the land, that the spirits of those beings became what was called demons. So demons could be identified as a result of the Nephilim existence.
So if you referred to somebody as having a Nephilim spirit, you're saying they have a demonic spirit. Is that fair to say?
You're saying they're potentially influenced by a demonic spirit, like Judas was. The spirit of Satan entered him and he betrayed Christ. So he was basically influenced by that spirit.
Okay, and there's a concern within the fellowship that there's a satanic force or could be a satanic spirit that seeks to take down the fellowship. Is that accurate?
Take down the fellowship.
Or seeks to harm the fellowship?
That seeks to harm individuals in the fellowship, yes.
Okay, and you've used the phrase Nephilim to refer to other people, correct?
Sure.
Who have you referred to as a Nephilim within the fellowship?
Within the fellowship? I don't know that I've referred to people within the fellowship as Nephilim.
Pause here, because as we all know, like Martha, John's ex-wife, was constantly referred to publicly as a Nephilim, amongst others.
Yes.
Okay, so who have you referred to as he says nobody? Mm-hmm. Have you referred to people who were in the membership but removed or withdrawn from it? Have you referred to them as Nephilim?
I may have. I don't recall specific incident.
Again, repeatedly, Nephilim, Martha, Nephilim. Okay. Did you ever refer to Donna as a Nephilim?
Are you speaking of my ex-wife?
Yes.
No.
Did you ever do that from the platform?
Refer to her as a Nephilim?
Yes.
Not to my knowledge or recollection.
Did you ever refer to any person from the platform at any time as a Nephilim?
I don't remember doing so.
Is it fair to say the term Nephilim is widely understood in the fellowship as a very negative aspect if somebody shows that type of spirit?
It's not just any negative behavior. It's negative behavior that could be associated with what you might refer to as satanic spirit. Oh, that's a
me.
Question.
I mean, you were just supposed to say certainly.
I was? Oh, I didn't see that it was part of the highlight.
Certainly.
We have a really advanced system going on over here. We actually printed paper out.
How long it took us to do all this. And
then this morning we had to rush to get copies because we realized that we each needed to read from it.
Very expensive copies. Don't... UPS,
well, Sunday morning, I think they upcharge you or something. Okay,
Sunday morning.
Do we want to redo that, or are we just leaving all this in?
Let's just leave it all in.
Okay. All right. Ask this question again. Page 277.
Asked and answered, Scott. Okay. Let's just pick it up at, I'll say, so if somebody shows that type of spirit, wait, is it fair to say the term Nephilim is widely understood in the fellowship as a very negative aspect if someone shows that type of spirit?
Certainly.
It's not just any negative behavior. It's negative behavior that could be associated with what you might refer to as a satanic spirit, correct?
I would tend to say demonic spirit.
A demonic spirit?
Mm-hmm.
And a demonic spirit is designed to draw people away from their walk with Christ. Is that fair to say?
Or torment them in the process of their walk with Christ.
Okay. And so it's somebody who has the potential to have a very negative relationship or influence on somebody who's trying to walk in the fellowship in the right way. Is that a fair statement?
That's fair.
Okay, jumping ahead.
Oh, you don't have from line 3 all the way down?
I do not, but I see it now.
It's highlighted here.
Okay, 3 all the way down. Mm-hmm. So if somebody's referred to as a Nephilim or having a Nephilim spirit, is it fair to say that what's being communicated is you shouldn't interact with that person, at least while they're exhibiting that spirit? Is that fair to say? Yes. So sometimes it would be important to say that from the platform or say that in a public meeting so that people who are voluntary adherents know that they shouldn't be influenced by the Nephilim. Is that correct?
No, I don't believe that was a common practice.
Again, that was common practice for those of you who don't know. No, okay, so did it happen at all?
I don't really recall an incident.
Did you ever...
I don't know. I'm just saying I don't recall an incident.
Hey, Gary getting testy.
All right.
So then we go forward talking about what is a Jezebel.
Yes.
What did a Jezebel refer to within the fellowship?
A Jezebel was referred to as or thought of as somebody who was, again, influenced by a demonic spirit or was a worshiper of, something other than the one true God.
Okay, again, very negative.
Yes.
If somebody was referred to as a Jezebel, that's a big deal.
Yes.
It means that people shouldn't be with that person, right? At least at that time, fair to say.
Fair to say.
Is there anything with Jezebel connected to sexuality?
Well, again, biblically there was, but I don't think it just the use of that term there necessarily was no.
Okay. So I'd like to point out, that the whole thing of ostracization, why is that word so difficult?
Yeah, that's right. That's a common theme. He's verifying everybody did it right.
Mm-hmm.
If you were Nephilim or Jezebel, you were to be avoided and ostracized.
Exactly.
That's great. Okay, so a little bit further on.
So this is 280. We've talked about how you might use the term Nephilim or Nephilim spirit to refer to somebody or somebody's actions or their spirit that they're exhibiting. What types of things would lead you to refer to somebody as being a Jezebel or having a Jezebel spirit?
Probably perverting God's divine order.
What does that mean?
No, we're done there. Although we could go on. Do you want to?
He just talks more Bible stuff.
He does talk more. So he says, Jezebel perverted the authority of King Ahab, subverted it, and uses authority to kill people, take property, that type of thing. So just the perversion of doing things according to God's proper order.
Okay.
Next page was
281.
Yeah.
Could it be anything else, again, within the culture in the fellowship?
I think somebody who was, being extremely manipulative of others could be categorized that way.
Marilyn. Okay, when you say manipulative, what about sexually manipulative?
Not specifically.
Could it apply in that context?
I don't believe I've used it in that context.
Have you ever heard Marilyn use it in that context?
I don't recall.
Have you ever heard anybody use Jezebel or Jezebel's spirit as kind of a pejorative to refer to another female in a sexual context?
I don't recall a specific instance, but I would guess that people did do that, did say that. There's a lot of, people can say anything, right? This is a congregation of people that are making up their own minds about how they're going to speak or treat one another or whatever. So it's very possible, except for Gary constantly said, we'll tell you how to think. So
all the time, yeah.
We get to make up our own minds.
I see.
You want it down here at the very bottom of 282.
Spiritual
actually.
warfare. Yeah. Okay. Can you describe for me spiritual warfare?
Certainly. There's obviously a spirit world, obviously. We see it in the scriptures. We see people who were thwarted. Paul said that he was on his way to a location and was hindered by Satan from going. So that would be termed in the category of spiritual warfare.
Let's bring it back to the Living Word Fellowship. What's the concept of spiritual warfare within the fellowship?
Satan hindering our activities or what we were trying to accomplish.
How would you recognize that Satan was hindering the activities?
Discerning of spirits, which is an operation of the Holy Spirit. Revelation, perception, discerning of spirits.
Can you explain that a little bit deeper for me?
No.
It's just a hard no. Oh, man, what a dick. Okay. So, again, it would be by perception, revelation by the Holy... Oh, that's what Gary said at the end. Okay.
Yeah.
Over your time within the fellowship, did you feel that you received revelation of spiritual warfare going on against the Living Word Fellowship?
I discern spiritual warfare.
Okay. Now, in section 5, so this is an exhibit that he's showing.
Yeah, so they've provided an exhibit, the lawyers have, which is, I think in this case, is something to do with APCO's. We don't actually have
bylaws.
Bylaws. There's a whole bunch of this kind of stuff. So he slides that in front of him and he says that.
Okay, there's a section called Evaluation of Ministries. Do you see that?
I do.
It says, at no time is the ordained ministry to be evaluated in the light of accusations or circumstantial evidence. Do you see that?
I do.
Have you ever seen that before?
Yes.
That's a common clause in many of the bylaws throughout the fellowship?
I believe so.
What does that mean?
Well, when someone makes an accusation, again, it's circumstantial evidence, and something should be done to investigate the proof of it.
Okay, what kinds of things should happen to investigate the proof of it? If somebody
makes...
Where does it go?
We fucking do this so often. You know what? A lot of these, this might be one of those ones. A lot of these just cut off there.
That's true. Yeah, they eliminate.
Right. They just kind of take stuff.
For confidentiality.
And you can even see the next page says this is from the non-confidential.
From the non-cup. So that's why it skipped ahead.
Cuts off.
Again, this was like all
I know, sorry.
Crazy.
There's a lot of this stuff going on here. What I think is really interesting, just to like summarize that last little section. So first off, and I know some of this might seem kind of dry, like hearing us read this stuff, and it's like kind of dry
Going through it.
the way that they talk about it. But it's really interesting because we've heard John, we've heard Gary, and maybe we've played this stuff in past episodes about what a Nephilim is, what it isn't, but it's here. It's like gets separated into like there's the Bible version and then there's Gary's version.
Yeah. And
then clearly, like what it says here when they're reading that section 5 thing, it says ordained people should not be evaluated in the light of circumstantial evidence and accusations. I mean, this is like, it's written into the bylaws that basically like that, and what they're building to, and that's what we're going to see in these last couple of pages, is just like we did our episode on the split, right?
Yeah. Based
on accusations and Nephilim. Are we seeing this together? Like John got accused of infidelity. He called her a Nephilim.
The accuser.
So now it's written into the code of the church that those that are ordained, the ordained ministries, cannot be evaluated based on accusations from the congregation.
Which kind of translates to, if you bring us a problem, you're just accusing, we don't believe you.
And you're a Nephilim. Or a Jezebel.
Because we saw that so many times, like with Rick, for example, people hey, I see a problem here. And then it's like, well, we don't have enough evidence or whatever. Who knows? It's no one was believed.
Exactly. And we've talked about this in a number of different ways. Like I've said before, the truth and the calling crap is without repentance and whatever. This is like the codified. This is the stuff that's in the bylaws. This is like the way the organization functions, not just the culture, not just what they say, but like the way that, okay, let's finish it because this is where it kind of ties it all together there. So
there's another section here, number 5. At the end, it says, no accusation is to be received except in the presence of 2 or 3 witnesses. Do you see that?
I'm looking. He sees it. There's a highlighted section. Skip down to the next part.
It says, this principle is necessary because of the exceeding deceitfulness of Satan's attack against ministries.
This principle is necessary because the exceeding deceitfulness of Satan's attack against ministries. Again, that's when the Nephilim attack the ministries.
Is that kind of the worry that a single complaining party making an allegation of misconduct might be acting in the Nephilim spirit?
Not within the Nephilim spirit. They could be acting however they want to just by lying and bringing an accusation against somebody.
Could that extend to allegations of sexual misconduct?
Asked and answered.
It's objections. Let me ask it in this way. You made a distinction in your testimony between allegations of non-sexual misconduct and allegations of sexual misconduct or sexual molestation, correct?
Say that again.
You seem to have made a distinction in your testimony between accusations of misconduct and accusations of sexual misconduct.
Yes.
On the one hand, it should be handled internally when it doesn't involve sexual misconduct, and an investigation to determine the veracity of the allegation, right?
Yes.
Then with regard to sexual misconduct, you've said that should be reported to police?
Yes. There's legal requirements for sexual harassment, sexual misconduct, abusing a minor. That, to me, falls outside the purview of decision by the church to make that determination.
Why wasn't that specified in the bylaws?
I don't know.
I think it's interesting, too, that he acknowledges, he knows what the law is, but that's not what happened.
Exactly. I mean, it's like that wasn't put in the bylaws. There was nothing in the bylaws that were like, or in the teachings or whatever, like call the police if there's sexual misconduct or get some sort of outside investigation.
Yeah.
But what was in the bylaws was that like our ministries are constantly being attacked by the Nephilim spirit. So when some Jezebel comes up and says like, this happened to me, ignore it.
Yeah.
You can't judge the ordained based on accusations and circumstantial evidence.
Then that's the dates all the way back to John, like you said, where it's like, oh, no, I'm just being accused not because I am a adulterer. It's just Satan's attack against my ministry.
Exactly. It's like, it feels like that, the split of like that whole thing happened and like John's sitting with this thing and he constantly talks about this person as a witch and a Nephilim like for years and years and years. And then they go to draft all this stuff and they're like, yeah, make sure you put a clause in there that's like, if these Nephilim be coming and like saying stuff, we can't judge the leadership based off of that. Okay. Is this the next one we're doing?
This is submission. What do you got over there?
I got Rick Holbrook Affairs. Okay, which one do we want to do? The vote at the bottom of your screen.
I think submission.
I think Rick Holbrook Affairs.
Rock, paper, scissors. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, so submission is essentially the designated relationship stuff.
And that does take us in then to the apostolic father
That
ministry
goes into
stuff.
the father and ministry stuff. It's actually
This actually ties in better to what we were just talking about.
exactly. There you go.
Oh my God, we just figured it out. Thank you for staying with us while we figured our shit out.
This was, just to say, this was a ton of mother grabbing work.
It was. It was like 2
like
days worth of work.
Yeah, it was like just reading through this stuff, highlighting it, breaking it down, organizing it into like a way that makes it make sense. And
we're still messing it up.
And we're still screwing it up. So thank you for bearing with us. All right, let's get this going. So again, this is still Gary talking about, mostly about the various affairs that Rick, his wife Marilyn's son, was involved in. Rick was also a leader in the church, and we've talked about him 1,000 times, and he's really kind of at the center of all of this crap.
Yeah, and he's obviously always been a problem. And kind of our point with this is like these incidents kept happening, and things were reported. We found out later, and nothing was done until he was kicked out at the very end, right before Shalom's letters, and it was for other reasons.
Exactly.
So
I don't know if very much is like revealed in this, as far as like what I know. It might be different for those that are tuning in, but what I love about it, and it's the same thing with all of this stuff, is it's like it's on the record, and this is we get to hear actually from Gary what he wants to put on the record, which doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth, but it's Gary talking.
Yeah. So he's here talking about how Rick was set out of the church, which is what they basically when someone was kicked out of the church. But what was always happening was he would get set out sort of for show.
Couple months.
And then get brought back in again and again. So
he did that 3 times for the 4 different affairs that he had. Was it 3 affairs? 4 marriages. 4 marriages.
3 affairs that we know of.
It's okay. Here we go. We're starting with an answer on this. Okay. So this is Gary. I just know he was publicly set out because of an adulterous situation, and it was in front of the congregation. It was recorded. The tape of that was sent to every church in the fellowship. Somebody send me that tape.
This also, though, I told you, I feel like Gary is confusing this affair with the 90s affair, because I remember that tape being sent out, and it was about his affair with the other,
and so that's what you'll see even at the end of this. You'll just get it, which, we're all gonna, even someone like Gary, we can forgive for being confused over which freaking affair.
True story. Okay.
So go ahead.
Do you remember the name of the tape?
I do not.
Do you remember the name of the word that was delivered that day?
I do not.
When did that happen approximately?
84. I'm trying to think of his divorce. That would have been my best recollection.
84.
I think 84 or 85, something like that.
So was that right soon after, meaning within a year or 2 of you marrying Marilyn?
It would have been if it was at the date, yeah.
Okay. And then again, to help narrow the time frame, he was married several times, right?
Correct.
Do you remember which spouse?
That's what I'm trying to remember. I think it was when he divorced Tammy.
That was, to your recollection, early to mid 1980s?
That was close after John's passing, I think.
Okay.
Down here.
So that's affair number 1. Were you involved in the setting out ceremony? I
probably would have been, yes.
Okay. If you were involved in the setting out ceremony, would you have been involved in the setting out decision?
Objection. He says yes, though.
He says yes. Because he the boss.
Okay, and then continuation of more of these questions. A lot of times there's like 3 pages of just clarifying what the question means.
Yeah.
So let's forgive us why we are skipping around a lot. It's not like you're missing information most of the time. Okay, well, number 1, things like that weren't done by one person. So it wouldn't have been Marilyn, or it wouldn't have been me. It would have been a group of pastors and people who are in authority in the church that would have been involved in a decision like that. And again, you'll hear that crap over and over again, being like, no, it wasn't my decision. It wasn't Marilyn's decision. We got together. It was almost democratic, in fact, blah, 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 blah. Okay.
Not true.
Yeah.
What was it about Rick's circumstance in 1984 or 85 that merited him being set out?
His place of ministry.
What does that mean?
He was a minister at the Living Word and was responsible for the spiritual influence that he had on people there. I actually like that that's in the record too. According to Gary, the head of this thing, that Rick was an actual minister. He wasn't just some guy bebopping around, doing recording stuff.
Yeah, he had influence.
17.
Ministry,
Yeah,
17.
17.
How long was he set out for?
I don't recall.
But he came back, right?
He did.
Do you have any kind of estimate for how long he was set out for?
I don't remember now.
But he earned his way back?
He went through counseling and ministry. Yes.
Okay, who provided the counseling?
He went to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. I don't remember which. That was not affiliated with the church in any way.
Okay, and he did ministry?
I'm sorry?
Did he do counseling with a minister?
Yes.
You have no idea how long that went on for?
No, I don't.
Did he do it with you?
I'm sure I prayed with him, yes.
Well, that should have taken care of it.
I don't know why that didn't solve all the problems.
Okay.
You're still going there, actually.
How long did I do it for? I'm sure I prayed with him, yes. Okay, other than that, did you provide him with any spiritual guidance?
Well, I would have definitely pointed out the spiritual violation to him and recognition that this was unacceptable behavior.
Other than his position at the Living Word, was there any other reason why he was set out for his infraction?
Hold on a sec. We got a lot of objections. And he just says, no, I don't remember. And
Because then the lawyer goes on to say, after all that back and forth, was there any other type of misconduct of any kind that was brought to your attention prior to the infidelity outreach?
That's right. No.
Okay, you said there may have been another time he was set out.
Witness nods his head up and down.
When would that have been?
That would have been at the time he divorced Shannon and got into a relationship with Maria.
Okay, approximately when was that?
Sometime in the 90s, but I don't remember more specifically.
Early or mid-90s?
I don't remember. It was probably later because I know I confronted him about it in Shiloh, which would have been around June.
When you say later, after 1995?
No, probably just probably later in the year, or it could have been after that year.
Okay. Incidentally, the second time that you recall Mr. Holbrook may have been set out, do you remember how long he was set out for on that occasion?
I do not.
Was it a period of days, weeks, months, or years?
It would be a guess. I'd say months.
Months. Okay. Do you think it was as long as 6 months or something shorter than that?
I don't recall.
If I remember correctly, I know you don't remember specific year, but it sounded like you were tying it close in time to when he married Maria. Is that right?
Yes, it was surrounding that relationship.
Okay. What was it? It was something about the relationship that caused him to be set out?
The adultery.
What was happening?
He was in the process of getting ready or leaving his current wife and developing that relationship. I don't know at what stage it was in when I confronted him a couple times about it. He denied that there was anything happening between himself and Maria or that he was thinking in that direction or whatever. So I'm not sure how things progressed.
Okay. Over what period of time did you confront him about it?
At the time I specifically remember was at the School of Prophets in Shiloh in Iowa.
What do you remember about that?
Well, I remember that just observing his behavior, I thought it was inappropriate, and Marilyn likewise. We talked about it and had him come up to the apartment and said, hey, this is what we're seeing. We want to know what you're doing. Do you have intentions? Is this a relationship? Are you guys involved, getting involved? What? And everything was denied.
Okay, so at the time he was still married to Shannon?
Correct.
Okay. So then they go on and, the attorney has Gary discuss more details of the behavior he was observing. We won't get into that.
Ultimately, all Gary said that he saw was
like flirting.
And that kind of stuff, but nothing really physical.
That's what he
says.
Said, yeah.
In what context?
Are you aware of the history, as in Rick's history?
Oh, where are you? I have.
I was just putting the page 227 in context.
Oh, okay. We're skipping 226.
Oh, none of the highlights showed up on my phone.
Okay, we haven't started at line 9. Sorry, we did photocopies this morning. Highlights.
Some of the highlights didn't show up. Okay. Yeah. In what context did you observe them? Was it in a mixed group with other people around, a party, in a church, or what?
I think this is important just because this is me. I think it's important because it says it shows who Rick is. But here we go. He would be part of putting on the 4th of July production. And so a lot of that activity happened outside on the grounds surrounding the amphitheater. And so it was in that area, as well as one time after the service was over, he went to a restaurant and he helped.
We went to the
restaurant and he happened to be at the restaurant with several people, including her. And we observed it at that time.
Okay. And it was pretty obvious flirting?
Yeah.
Obvious enough that you would confront him about it?
Right.
And you were aware of the history?
Definitely.
That was a factor?
Yes.
Had anything happened in between the first setting out and the incidents that you just described at Shiloh about Rick's behavior that gave a concern?
No.
Mark that in your brains, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever see him interact with other females in a similar way?
No, we weren't around him that much. So there wasn't a lot of opportunity, but I know I did not.
Did anybody ever say anything to you or around you? I hear Rick is flirting with a lot of the girls or a lot of the young women. Anything like that
No.
you heard between the first setting out and the second setting out? Jesus, Gary, get off my tip.
God, that's in the record? No.
Now he denied everything you said, right?
Correct.
Okay. What's the next thing that happened with regard to Rick and his behavior that ultimately resulted in a second setting out?
Well, at some point he did divorce Shannon or talks about divorcing Shannon and was also pursuing a relationship with Maria and admitted it. How far? I don't remember.
How far after? I don't remember. Okay, was it days, weeks, months, or years?
Probably months.
All right.
Okay, this next one has a lot of scribbles on it. So and then there's a circle at the bottom that we like of 234.
Yeah, this is important. Did you ever confront Rick and say, hey, when did this start? And the reason that we mark that is because we don't even know if Maria was of age when this started.
Yeah, I think that's what they're trying to get to here is like, and whether that was the case or not, she was kind of young. And so there was there should be a concern of asking that question, like how long has this been going on for kind of thing. Okay, so then it continues after they ask that question, there's a few objections and whatever. And then Gary says, well, when I found out about the relationship being improper, then there was a discussion, yes.
About when it started?
I don't remember specifically asking a date when they started having sex.
Okay, well, relationships can start without having sex. You'd agree with that, right?
Right.
Did you talk to him or try to ascertain how long he'd been flirting and courting with Maria?
No, I didn't need to. I observed it myself in Shiloh, so to me, from that point on, I assumed it continued.
Did you take any steps to try to figure out whether it started before you observed what you observed?
I confronted him. I asked him. He denied it.
So is it fair to say you didn't take any steps to try to figure out how early it started?
Yes, I did not take any steps to find out if there was something before that.
How was the decision made that he would be set out?
I don't recall.
Do you remember who was involved in the decision making?
No, I do not.
At the time that he was set out, was it understood that he would be set back in after a period of time?
No.
Was he set out for a longer or shorter period of time, or the same amount of time as the first time?
I don't recall.
He was set back in, is that right?
He was.
Was there any change in title, job duties, or responsibilities when he came back in?
I don't remember the process.
Was there any additional counseling or ministry that was given to him in order before he was allowed back in?
Oh my God, there's so many objections in here. It's just fun. It's just we skip over all of it, but like, it's a totally interesting.
Big and ambiguous
thing.
as to
every
additional.
little thing. Yeah, every little thing is like objected over, and I don't think there's anything like particularly wrong with that. I think that's probably normal.
Yeah.
But it's just funny. Okay, did he? You mean was he given other responsibilities or what?
Fair enough. Was he required to undergo any counseling or work with a pastor before he would be allowed back into the church?
Yes.
Okay, what was the requirement on him?
That he be under authority of pastoring and that there be obvious repentance and prayer relative to this.
Did he do that?
We believe so.
What did you do to make sure that he would?
I was the one who prayed with him.
Oh, well, in that case. Those are my words. Other than that? Was there any effort undertaken during that time period to try to determine if he had engaged in similar types of behavior with any other young women or minors?
This is the fun part. Can you repeat that?
Sure. In the 1980s, he had an issue of infidelity with somebody, right?
Correct.
He was made to undergo counseling and therapy. He was kicked out of the church for a period, right?
Correct.
He was let back in. Is it fair to say he was let back in under the auspices that he wouldn't engage in similar type of behavior?
Yes.
At the time that he was set out the first time, was there any effort to investigate or determine whether he engaged in any type of infidelity with any other female?
No.
So now that he had been the second time, sometime in the 90s, was there any effort at that time to say, okay, now this is twice. Was there any effort to determine or investigate whether he engaged in similar behavior with any other females?
Other than the conversations with himself and others in authority at the Living Word building, no.
Okay. So here's where we have some...
Pause.
Yeah, we're pausing because...
Can we summarize just what that whole back and forth was really quick?
Sure.
It was just an attempt to see if there was any due diligence done to be like, okay, so this has become
A pattern.
is becoming a pattern.
Becoming a pattern.
Like this has happened twice. It's really similar situation. He's working on marrying the third wife. And the way that, we all understand this to see this is like, oh, Rick was caught in an affair. So let's quickly get him to divorce the last wife and marry the new one, and then all will be forgiven. He can be set back into the church. It's the way that it like appeared from the outside. So this is drilling into being asking Gary, like, okay, what did you not recognize that this was an issue? And did you do anything to check around with people? And Gary so far has just said, well, I talked to Rick himself, and I talked to others in authority at the Living Word building. So the people that worked for Rick essentially, and asked them, well, is there anything else going on? But never is he saying here that he's like, they're conducting an investigation with people that worked with.
And he's also implying that, he
nothing
says
came up.
that nothing came up. Like no one ever said anything.
Yeah.
They had
that's
no
right.
knowledge of him behaving like this with any other females
Right.
besides these two affairs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have firsthand information. This is not hearsay. This is a woman who actually told me this personally.
Mm-hmm.
And that at the time that Rick was getting ready to marry Shannon, who he had the first affair with, he was trying very hard to sleep with this woman, and even went so far as to,
This was a woman that would be working.
This was a
with
woman
him.
who worked at the Living Word, or volunteered at the Living Word, was very involved, and essentially, like it was an ongoing thing. And he was using all kinds of manipulation tactics, like, this would be like something so in the Lord, and John Stevens would have loved it, or whatever, all that crap. But also there was an incident where there was alcohol involved, and she didn't know what happened, and it questions, like a very inappropriate situation where, not in any place to consent. She doesn't know what he did or if he did, but it was not good. And she wrote Gary and Marilyn a letter during the time that the second affair came out, during the time that Maria and Rick were set out. And they had, I guess she said, so that Gary and Marilyn from the platform opened the door to say, like, hey, if anybody, write us letters if you have any questions or concerns. And so she did. She wrote them this letter and told them what happened. And
what did Marilyn say? She
gave it to her shepherds, and then to Gary and Marilyn. Marilyn said, we're going to forget. You're going to forget this ever happened. We're going to forget this ever happened. We're going to destroy every copy of that letter. We're going to destroy it, and used all of this manipulation tactics. Like, you're you're a part of the family. You're so important. Like,
she said that we're going to forget this ever happened.
We're going to forget this ever happened.
And Gary, it appears, he'd forget
exactly
that it ever happened.
But that is very disturbing, very disturbing information. Like, this is more than just a pattern of affairs. This is a pattern of predatory sexual behavior.
Yeah. The Living Word, what you see when you put all this stuff together is that, like, the Living Word building, Rick's production studio, was a playground for him to harass women that were supposed to be working for him. And that's what we kind of go on with this too, the finishing part of this part with his third wife, or his third affair. And in here is that, which we'll read right now, it's just about how Rick was the superior, because he was in charge of the whole thing. And it was just like, we were just talking about the other day, like, wow, Rick really did get to live that, like, Hollywood producer life.
He never had a real job.
Yeah, he never had a real job. He just always had that thing. And then he would just stock the Living Word building with women that he wanted and would go after them.
I think he had a brief period of time when he was set out with Maria that he worked, like as a recording engineer, but then he came right back. Every time he came back, he was still put in a position of leadership, still had his little playground at the studio, and that's at the Living Word building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this is all showing Gary and Marilyn, just repeatedly sweeping this behavior under the rug. When they did hear of stories outside of the ones where he was actually caught in an affair, they said they'd forget about it and destroyed the evidence about it.
Yeah.
And just moved on. And so I'm sure there's even more on top of that. And so let's finish this little bit.
Okay. So Maria was assigned to the Living Word building. Is that right?
She wasn't assigned to it. She worked there.
Is it your understanding that this relationship cultivated at the Living Word building?
Yes.
And Rick was her superior, right?
Yes. She worked for him in the studio.
Was that a particular concern, the fact that there was this imbalance where he's a superior and she worked for him?
Well, I mean, it wasn't, I mean, we did not work at the Living Word building, so we were not there to observe it.
I understand.
So unless somebody brought that to our attention, we would not know if there was something happening there or not.
Fair enough. Did you do anything to invite people to bring information to your attention?
There are people that I know that would bring it to our attention if there was something they were aware of happening, like the people that worked for Rick's best friends, who were all in charge at the Living Word building.
Not likely.
Not likely.
Okay, but my question is, did you seek it out from those people or from any other person?
Not to my remembrance.
Did you ever ask, hey, has anybody seen any misconduct on behalf of Rick? He's being set out. We want to know everything. Did you ever do anything like that?
Yes, we talked with the authorities at the Living Word building. Again, those are Rick's lackeys, his best friends.
Yeah, he says it right here.
childhood.
So he says, who did you speak with?
And he spoke with Steve Siebold, his wife, and there were others that were functioning at the building at that time on the daily basis. So, by the way, that answer, Steve Siebold, his wife, and there were others functioning. That shirtless photo at the top, Steve Siebold. So that guy's going to be like, hey, yeah, actually, there was misconduct. Also, the second wife was so
bizarrely, yeah, Steve and Shannon were married when Rick.
So Rick's second affair
he stole Steve's woman.
Yeah. And if Steve didn't do anything about that, what makes you think he's going to do anything about anything else?
Oh, Lord.
Okay.
Okay, so.
And then the last question is.
What did they tell you?
Oh, wait, what?
We have no
we have no reports of other activity like that, but you do.
But you do, yeah. Mm-hmm. When he was set back in, was he allowed to function at the Living Word again?
At the Living Word building?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he allowed to supervise females again?
I don't know that he was supervising females. He was working mostly in the studio recording business with just a bunch of females working for him. Is that supervising females? I can't say.
When was that studio formed?
No. That's the end of our story there.
Oh, I don't know why I have that highlighted. My highlights are...
That's all right. We're a little out of sync here, friends.
A little bit.
Okay, we're on 631 now.
Okay, this is affair number 3, folks.
Yes, I have a lot of it scribbled out in just a circle with an arrow. Okay, that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Okay, do you remember Mr. Holbrook resigning in 2008 for a period of time?
Yes.
And was it a voluntary resignation, or was it the result of essentially being set out again?
Yes, it was the result of, I believe, the affair between himself and Lorena. That is wife number 4. And that's all that we really felt was interesting to hear on
it's just that he was set out again.
Yeah, for the result of an affair.
Ever does any good, because then guess what, folks?
Yes.
He's brought back and given even more power.
That's right. Yes. And so this last part is the last time he was removed. So how many times is that total? 5 removals or 4 removals?
This would be the 4th, right?
The 4th removal after the third
affair. He's now married to his 4th wife.
This is so silly. We should break this down into numbers. 4 wives, which means 3 affairs, 4 divorces at this point. Not at this point, but total. And this would be the 4th setting out because, that's right.
And this one is permanent. He and Lorena were both...
Yeah, but probably only because the fellowship was closed down.
Exactly. That's what we talked about. It's like, okay, so Marilyn had died by now, and it's just Gary. And like, rumor has it behind the scenes that Gary and Rick, they were in a power play for like who's going to get all of this, right?
Yes.
So this is just me, Charity, hypothesizing, theorizing that like Gary was looking for any excuse to kick Rick out.
Yes, that's right.
And lucky him, this was when the 360 evaluations, where the congregation was invited to send feedback, and people, I guess, were just real fed up because everyone started really being honest, and a lot of people had problems with Rick for various reasons.
Yeah.
So he and Lorena get set out permanently 2 weeks before Shalom's letters come out. Approximately. This is Gary's approximation. It's also my memory as well, my recollection. Yeah. You haven't talked to Rick at all since then? And he says, sorry, I didn't highlight it.
You gotta tell me what page.
Page 88. You haven't talked to Rick at all since then. Gary says, I don't believe so.
Okay, that's not highlighted on mine.
I know, mine neither. I
It's
really,
just a real
really screwed
mess
up.
The interns are screwing things up so that the producers of this show don't know what's going on. Okay, go.
What was the nature of the last conversation you had with him?
That they were going to be removed from the congregation and removed from the ministry, removed from any responsibilities on any corporation or anything having to do with the churches in any way, shape, or form. It was permanent.
Okay, so that's why I highlighted that, because it's permanent. And it's only permanent now because it benefits Gary and because Marilyn's not around to like save her little precious little boy and keep giving him his job back, even though he's a fucking asshole.
So what did that? Okay, thank you for bearing with us through that mess of trying to tell it together, because a lot of that, again, like we said at the beginning of it, that a lot of that was like more or less known. I think we've covered it in various ways, but it's a timeline. Never really heard it from Gary. No. I don't have a lot. All those tapes he talks about, I don't have access to. I don't think. As much as I would love to. They were restricted. Yeah, restricted or only sent around to play at the churches or whatever. So, but it's just, it shows that thing of like how one serial abuser can just like over and over and over again and just get, forgiven or whatever, just let back in to do it again and again. Enabled. And the information is like kind of covered up and just tossed aside. There's not investigations. Mm-hmm. And it ties into that Nephilim thing of like the ordained cannot be investigated based off of the, as it said in those articles, based off of accusations. It's also like not much was done to prevent him from doing these things again. Like you think about when he was married to Maria, I get hired as his assistant, a 19-year-old female. I think before me or after me, it was another young woman my age. And then Lorena. It's like, hello, maybe have him get a male assistant. Yes, exactly. And like how much he changed it around, because you've told that story before about how you knew that he hired this young woman, his fourth wife, Lorena, as an assistant, and he was not supposed to. She had already been removed or moved across the country to keep her away from Rick. And then some of the senior members of APCO, of the Apostolic Company, were talking to you, and you mentioned that she was working for Ricky, and they were like, what? Well, I was like, she doesn't live in Shiloh anymore. Rick moved her back to LA, and she's living in his guest house. Yes. It's just like happened over, and he had full reign, and Gary and Marilyn didn't want to do anything about it. And that also is going to segue into Gary trying to be like, oh, we weren't in charge. We didn't have veto power. Like we didn't, they knew what was happening and APCO didn't. It's like they would, if Gary and Marilyn signed off on it, nobody could say anything. Exactly. That's exactly right. So. What are these last two, Charity? Okay. Submission. All this stuff on submission. Submission meaning designated relationships, Elijah, Elisha. This is the system of control. We actually did an episode about this early on. That's called designated relationships or something like that, system of control, and it details how this thing worked. We played tapes from Gary where he talks about what it is. It was a very, very much a part of the culture of the Living Word Fellowship. Hyper control. And this whole time in this deposition, Gary tries to downplay submission. It was voluntary. Yeah, no big deal. Like you could be part of the fellowship and not submit to your shepherds and not have an Elijah. Yeah. So that's what that's one that we're gonna do. And then the one after that is the thickest one, and it's a lot of detail. It's actually really interesting because not only is it Gary trying to deny his role as what they say in here is the apostolic fathering ministry, which according to the org chart, put him on top. Through the whole thing, he's trying to deny his role and how he was the supreme leader of the Living Word, and playing out, oh, no, I did it. It was where the local churches handled their own stuff. I was just this or that, whatever. But not only does it do that, does it go through that frustrating stuff, which is very entertaining. It also details some early stuff of how Gary came into power how Marilyn came into power, how they each got that role, what was John's role, how did the Apostolic Company get formed into what it was, and why it was what it was, where it had total control of all the fellowships, and like this thing of like, these are local churches, but actually they have to submit to blah, 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 the hierarchy, like all of that stuff is in here, and about interesting little tidbits that I like about Marilyn and John when they got married, because that was a really quick marriage before John died, and Marilyn's possible knowledge of how sick John was before she married him. Suspish. So interesting stuff in here. We are doing that in a part 2. Lo siento. It's too long.
This is already an hour because we like to talk, and
it's just a lot.
It's a lot. And so rather than
torture you with it. Yeah. You save that for next week.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. Stay tuned for a part 2. Some of the meaty stuff, but all right. Thank you so much. See you later.
Thank you.
Objection. Asked and answered.
Argumentative.
Thanks for listening to Oops, I'm in a Cult.
Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Follow us on Instagram at Oops, I'm in a Cult Podcast.
Support us on Supercast by visiting our website at oopsiminacult.com to subscribe and receive exclusive bonus content.
Or email us at oopsiminacult@gmail.com.
Take it easy and don't join a cult. If you or someone you know has a mental illness, is struggling emotionally, or has concerns about their mental health, there are ways to get help. Use the resources linked in the description to find help for you, a friend, or a family member.